Imagine for a moment that you had to pay every time you installed a video game on your PC. If you have two PCs and you install it on each PC, you would have to pay twice. If you uninstalled a game because you needed room and then you installed it again when you were ready to play it, you'd need to pay again. Well, that reality is not far off if Unity has anything to do with it. If you don't know, Unity is a 3D game engine that a lot of developers use. A lot of your favorite developers use this engine. And Unity is attempting to get developers to pay for every time a game is installed by a customer. Here's a quick summary. Unity is attempting to make developers pay for each new game installed by a customer. As it says here, this is the most impractical, most unhinged business decision I've ever seen. John Riccitiello should resign. John Riccitiello is the CEO of Unity, and we're going to get into why, in fact, he should resign and why this is such a terrible decision. But first, let me hit you with the facts. So yes, Unity is changing their pricing and they have new plans here. Basically, the update that we have is that for a revenue threshold of $200,000, so if a game company made $200,000 in the last month, then they're going to be charged 20 cents every time a customer installs this. There's some really weird catches here. So does this fee apply to games that were already made and already on the market? Yes, it does apply. What else? Here's a breakdown. Here's an example. If a game app meets the minimum thresholds, then the fee will be calculated based on the applicable rate, depending on the number of installs, the country of installs, and the user's Unity plan, multiplied by the number of eligible installs. So for example, here there's 5 million installs. The revenue from the last 12 months was $2 million. So yeah, the developer is going to have to pay 20 cents every time a customer installs this in a standard country. They do have an emerging market rate, so 2 cents every time it's installed. And honestly, this is a really, really gross practice. Just think about it this way. There are companies large and small that use Unity, and if there are companies like EA, Square Enix, Ubisoft, and things like that that are using Unity, you can imagine that they're not going to just pay this 20 cents per install without passing that cost onto the consumer. Just think about that. The fact that every time you install a game, one day a big game company may pass that cost on to you. So now you think about whether or not you're willing to pay 20 cents every time you install a game, and also consider that Unity is not likely to keep these prices the same if this were to be successful. So the next thing to talk about is, why are they doing this? Well, that's easy. Here's a good tweet. If anyone's wondering what precisely has compelled Unity to try and racketeer the entire developer ecosystem reliant on it, I have a pretty good theory. And that is, Genshin Impact is made in Unity Engine. In fact, here are a bunch of other games made in Unity Engine: Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, Fate Go, Among Us, Fall Guys, Temple Run, Hollow Knight, VR Chat, Beat Saber. The list goes on, guys. This is insane. And there's something to consider here, that there are companies with really big games and a lot of money, and there are also smaller companies that are, selling pretty well. Hollow Knight was an unexpected success. I think to the degree that it was successful, that was relatively unexpected. And I don't know if a developer released a game like that today, that they would be prepared for a revenue model like this one. But you can be sure that this is why Unity is going with this business model. But of course, they've gotten a lot of pushback on Twitter and on other places over just the last 24 hours. So they've started walking this back already. Over the course of just, again, the last 24 hours, Stephen Totilo of Axios has been providing updates, and those updates have come frequently. He provided 2 big updates. I got some clarifications from Unity regarding their plan to charge developers per game install after clearing thresholds. The first note here is that if a player deletes a game and reinstalls it, that's 2 installs. 2 charges, same if they install on 2 devices. And here it says charity games and bundles are exempted from fees. That wasn't the case before. Again, they've been walking this back over the course of the last day. The next update, that was 6 hours later, it says another major update about Unity and their fees. Now it says Unity regrouped and says only the initial installation of a game triggers a fee. Demos mostly won't trigger fees, and devs are not on the hook for Game Pass. Yeah, that was another thing. Game Pass was initially included. The thing to note here is that Unity is walking this back very quickly. The truth is that they put this notice out very quickly and very rushed. I don't think that they were prepared for this pushback, even though there were people inside of Unity that did know that this pushback was going to come. It just seems like the executive team didn't really see it coming. One thing again here important is that it says demos mostly won't trigger fees. So the question is how, right? That's the question. I'm going to skip over here. How do they know? How do they know? How do they know? And also, how will they charge for that? Why would they screw developers over like that? Nobody is going to sign a Unity game into a subscription service with those terms being imposed automatically somehow. Essentially, Unity is operating on the trust me bro model. That's how Liam puts it here from Gaming on Linux, and he's absolutely right. It says we leverage our own proprietary data model. You can appreciate that we won't go into a lot of detail, but we believe it gives an accurate determination of the number of times the runtime is distributed for a given project. So they're outright saying here, they're not going to tell you how they're calculating the number of installs, but they're going to charge you for it anyway. Can you imagine that? They're going to send you a bill for 10,000 installs, and they're not going to tell you how they calculated those installs. It's not going to be itemized, so you won't know if it's from a demo, you won't know if it's from Game Pass, you won't know if it's from the same user on two different machines, or it was installed twice by the same user on the same machine. You don't know. A lot of the consequences that I'm going to talk about here, some of them have already been walked back. These are things that immediately people were calling out as problematic. From Rami Ismail, he says there is no way Unity talked to a single developer before launching this. Developing in Unity is now straight up a financial risk for subscription services, charity bundles, piracy. I'm going to get back to piracy. Being free to play or going free to play, malicious installs. That's why I wanted to get back to piracy, and giveaways. Yeah, malicious installs. What if instead of review bombing, you started install bombing a video game? You are tired of a game developer's politics. They have a DRM free version of a game on itch.io or something like that, and you just install and uninstall for hours straight on end, and now the developer has to pay 20 cents every time you do that. Can you imagine that? Just as a note, gamers, the Unity changes mean the following for you. Demos are now risky to developers. DRM-free games are now risky to developers. Bundles are risky to developers. Giveaways are risky to developers. So are updates, and multi-device users are now risky to developers. Those are Steam Deck users, PC handheld users. Many of us are multi-device users. This is a problem for gamers. I hate when we see things that are problems for developers and we just sort of throw that to the side and say, well, developers are being petty, developers are being dramatic. No, this is a problem for gamers as well. Don't forget that even aside from what Rami has said here, big developers will not just eat those costs. They're going to push those costs to us, the gamers. Imagine you make a game, the game is freemium, the game makes $200K from in-app purchases after being installed 3 million times. You're getting charged for the install, so now you owe Unity 20 cents for each of those installs. That's about 560,000. That's about 360,000 more than was made. This is a real life scenario, I believe. Here's another consequence. Imagine you release a game for 99 cents and you put that game up on Steam. That means that Steam takes 30% off the top, and then Unity takes 20 cents every time it's installed. Assuming it's installed once for each copy sold, you're now making a maximum of 46 cents on the dollar. 99-cent games just go away. Another one, Unity's pricing changes is going to kill charity bundles. No developer is going to want to give thousands of keys to bundles for raising money for charities if it means they will cross the threshold for being charged by Unity. Of course not. Why would they? Again, Unity walked back to charity bundles, but this was initially part of the plan. Here's one more. I hadn't even thought about the Game Pass implication until moments ago. Yeah, again, if you're installing on Game Pass, that would have counted as an install. And here's one more confirmation here. I got confirmation that demos do count as installs, by the way. So if you get into Steam Next Fest, a bunch of demos get installed. Then if your game does well enough to pass the threshold, you pay not only for every paid install, but every demo up that got installed. And then if someone uninstalls your game and reinstalls it, that counts and you have to pay for that. Yeah, I love Steam Next Fest. I'm a huge fan of Steam Next Fest. I download a bunch of demos. I'll be honest, sometimes I download demos that I don't even get to play. This is the worst case scenario for a developer in this new business model. So there's some of the consequences. let me talk about who is responsible for this. So John Riccitiello is the CEO of Unity. And prior to Unity, he was the CEO of EA during the time that EA was voted as the worst gaming company 2 years running. Here it says, No More Heroes 3 is the only video game that lets you beat the ever-living dogshit out of the current CEO of Unity in a Smash Brothers style type fight, approved by Nintendo, and it was made in Unreal Engine.
I'm the real king.
I see. So the real scumbag is you then?
So yeah, Suda51 had a very poor experience with EA and with John Riccitiello in particular. That's my understanding of the story. And so bad was the experience that he notoriously had a boss fight where you beat the crap out of John Riccitiello. Unity CEO John Riccitiello was EA CEO when FIFA 09 launched with loot boxes. Last year, he said devs making games without monetization in mind are, quote, fucking idiots, end quote. In an EA stockholder meeting, he entertained the idea of charging $1 to reload an ammo clip in Battlefield.
Playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not very price sensitive at that point in time. Consumer gets engaged in a property, they might spend 10, 20, 30, 50 hours on the game. And then when they're deep into the game, they're well invested in it. We're not gouging, but we're charging.
This is the guy we're talking about. He was part of popularizing loot boxes among big game developers. He has trashed developers that are not, quote unquote, monetizing their games. And he's even proposed $1 reload, $1 per reload. This man is unhinged. It gets worse. Unity CEO John Riccitiello sold 2,000 shares of Unity just 6 days ago. So could this be insider trading? Pretty cool to see Unity execs performing actual insider trading by selling shares mere days before the obvious shit show that is now the pricing structure changes. So the headline here reads, Unity Software President Bar Zeev sells 37,500 shares for 1.4 million. It looks like that was 5 days ago. So could it be that not only is there scumbaggery involved as it relates to gamers, but also that there may even be some insider trading? I don't know. So what's next for Unity and for gamers? Well, first of all, I think this is the end of Unity. It's impossible for me to sort of overstate the importance of this moment. I said that Unity has been walking back everything they're saying. And the truth is, there's no way that this pricing model moves forward. And I'm going to get into why it's impossible in my mind for this pricing model to move forward. So they're going to have to walk it back. But even in walking it back, they're going to lose trust with developers. Developers have to marry an engine. Making a game takes years. And once you've made that game, you've built a skill set with a particular engine. So you are married to a degree to an engine. So every developer that starts a new project now is going to start a new project on an engine other than Unity. They don't want to be married to this product. Big companies are not going to allow the use of Unity. We're going to go back to every big company having their own engine if Unity continues down this road. Or we're just going to go back to everybody using Unreal until game developers can make their own engines.
No, there is another.
The fact is that Unity has lost all trust in the developer community. There's no way they come back from this. And it gets worse. Here, Zalavier, I believe is how you pronounce his name, is saying that he's hearing at least one significant group of developers is talking class action lawsuit against Unity. And I mean, of course they are. Developers of games like Among Us, Genshin Impact, there's no way that they would stand for this. They have a few ways that they can approach this. They can try a class action. They can try to sue Unity. They can port their game away from Unity, which is another consequence that Unity has here. In the event that this pricing model does move forward in some way, there are two possibilities. Either you are a small-time developer and you're not crossing the revenue threshold anyway, and so you don't count when it comes to this new revenue model, or you're a big-time developer, you have made more than $200,000 in revenue, and maybe you have enough money to just port the game away from Unity, or shut down this game altogether and start a new game in Unity. Effectively, I don't see a way that Unity can go forward with this. The whales that they want to get here are these whales, right? The Genshin Impacts, the Among Us, And there's no way that happens because these are the developers that have the resources to port their game away from Unity. They can port their game to Unreal, they can make their own engine. These are the developers that have the money to do that. So regardless of what they do, regardless of what Unity does, they're gonna lose these developers. So all they have left are small developers that are gonna wanna end up changing their engine as well, and may even file a class action lawsuit against Unity. I don't see a path forward for this. They're going to walk this back entirely. And there's a chance here, right, that this is a BOM model of PR. So quick reminder about how the BOM model of PR works. Say you want to announce a price hike, but last time you did that, everybody got mad. You might deliberately announce a deranged new pricing scheme this week, and then next week announce the actual hike you wanted to get. That's entirely possible. But honestly, it seems like the leadership that is running Unity right now, it seems like they had no idea this was going to happen. They figured that they were going to be able to get away with this pricing model. And honestly, the consequences are far worse than the BOM model implicates. I think the consequences are that developers just lose entirely all trust with Unity. And the last thing here I want to say is that, again, I just want to focus on the fact that sometimes leadership can tank a company. And John Riccitiello, again, this is the same person that was there when FIFA 09 launched with loot boxes. He was there when EA was voted the worst company in the world in 2012 and 2013. He was there when EA thought of the idea of charging $1 to reload an ammo clip. And now he's here at Unity with an idea to charge 20 cents every time a video game is installed. And that is despicable. I say that to say sometimes the worst game company in the world, or the worst company in the world, isn't just the worst company in the world because their name is EA. They're the worst company in the world because they have leadership that is willing to tank the reputation of the entire company for the prospect of making a few more dollars. That gang out. Goodbye.